Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by Titan FC CEO Jeff Aronson. Jeff, how are you?
Good, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Jeff, let's just dive right into it. You got a big event coming up, May 16th, Titan FC 28. A great card, stacked top to bottom. I know that gets thrown around a lot in this industry when people talk about a fight card, but this really is a very impressive card you guys have assembled here. Let's start with the main event. Jason Brills versus Vinny Magliese was the original main event for this card. Vinny Magliese had a staph infection and was forced to withdraw from the fight card. So now Rafael Davis is going to be taking on Jason Brills. Why did you decide to go with Rafael Davis? Obviously, he's a guy who's been away from the sport for a while. He's on like a 1-year layoff. He's a very talented guy, Bellator vet. I think he was signed with World Series of Fighting, but something happened there. Why did you decide to go with Davis when Magliese dropped off?
So to me, this is a super compelling fight, right? We got Jason Brills, 20-5 on a 3-fight win streak. Really tough dude. Multi-time, I think 7-time UFC vet.
Right.
Gave Little Nogueira all he could take. In my mind, he won that fight. And he was going to fight Vinny Magliese. Vinny Magliese winds up with a staph infection, and now I have to find a replacement. So I'm thinking, and I remember Rafael Davis. And the interesting thing is, Rafael Davis has a win over Vinny Magliese and a win over Emmanuel Newton, the Bellator champion. So I was like, wow, this would be an incredible matchup. It's really compelling. To put Davis in there against Brills and let the two of them go at it, see who wins that fight, and possibly the winner of that fight taking on Magliese.
Mm-hmm. Now, earlier, like in March, I believe it was, there was a report on the Canadian website Top MMA News that it was going to be, for this card, the original main event was going to be Caleb Starnes versus Vinny Magliese. Now Starnes has moved to the co-main event. He's going to be fighting Dave Herman at heavyweight. Why did you decide to go not with Starnes and put him against Herman at heavyweight?
So it wasn't Starnes. It was actually DJ Lindemann that was going to fight against Dave Herman. And Walt Harris had just been released from UFC at that point. Right. So I really, really liked DJ Lindemann against Walt Harris. I thought that was an amazing fight to set up. Right. Two super tough guys. Walt Harris is a dynamic, explosive striker, just all-around athlete. The guy, high-level athlete. And then you have Lindemann, who's just, a straight-out, just tough dude. Like, he's not going to lie down for anyone. So the thought of putting those guys together was, again, very compelling to me, and I thought it would be a super exciting fight. Then I moved Caleb Starnes in to fight Dave Herman because Caleb has just been smashing everybody. And when the injury bug hit the card, I got to be honest with you, Caleb Starnes fans inundated me. Like, I knew who Caleb Starnes was, but when his fans got on me, I'm telling you, I must have had, thousands of Canadians just smashing me to get Caleb Starnes on the card. And our motto has always been fans, fighters first. They asked, they pushed, they wanted it. I reached out to Caleb. We made the fight happen.
Definitely. Now, sticking with the main event, Brills versus Rafael Davis. Davis kind of flying under the radar. You mentioned his big wins, but for some reason he doesn't have the same buzz that you would think of a guy who has the resume he does. Why is that? Why do you think that he's kind of flying under the radar? It's a common theme on this card. We'll get to some of the other guys who are flying under the radar as well, but why? Why do you think that?
It really is, and I think that's a great point by you. I think Davis is 13-2 or 12-2. Guy is a finisher. He's got an incredible finishing rate. I mean, the guy is a monster. I do not know. There are some times in MMA where, for a number of particular reasons, fighters don't get the limelight that they should. But this guy is a guy. If you don't know him and you haven't seen him fight, this is a guy that brings it. I mean, this is a guy that is not like a 13-2 padded record. This is a guy that's been in there with some monsters and done incredibly well.
This main event is very compelling because you have two guys who are in the same spot but got there in a different way, because you had Brills, who fought in the UFC, ran into some tough times. We had to go back to the regional circuit. Now he's rebuilt himself. I mean, who knows? Maybe a win here, another win, and maybe he's back in the big show. Then you have Rafael Davis, who's been slowly under the radar, building up wins and on a nice streak here, even though he had that little layoff, but he's still, on a nice little win streak. So it's very compelling in that regard.
Both guys are on 3-fight win streaks.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Now, shifting to the co-main event, Starnes versus Dave Herman, that's a very interesting matchup because you have Caleb Starnes, who's on one side of the fence on a very nice win streak, finishing a bunch of guys. Then you have Dave Herman, who's on a losing streak, 4 fights in a row that he's lost. He's been released from the UFC, and now he's trying to rebuild. What kind of matchup are you expecting from this fight? Obviously, Dave Herman, on that 4-fight win streak, are you expecting him to just, throw caution to the wind and go up, without anything to lose? If he loses this fight, it's 5. And if he, are you expecting him to just throw caution to the wind, or are you expecting him to be a little bit cautious, not trying to just grind out a decision here and not fall to that 5-fight losing streak? So what are you expecting from this fight?
So the thing that's compelling to me about this one is when Dave Herman's head is in the game, Dave Herman is one of the nastiest heavyweights around. If you remember when he first came into the UFC, people were singing his praises like crazy. I think he came in like 26-1 or 23-2, something crazy.
Yeah.
He just had a great record. He was smashing, knocking guys out all over the country. Everybody knew who he was. Came into UFC, won his first fight, then fought some stiff competition. I believe Gonzaga, Struve. He fought a bunch of tough dudes, and he wound up losing, which happens. I mean, coming from the management side, being the CEO of Alchemist for 3 years, 4 years, which is one of the largest MMA management companies in the world. I deal with this, where fighters go on streaks where they lose, they win, they lose, they win. Herman's a tough guy, but Caleb Starnes, man, he's been smashing people. I mean, his last fight, remember that elbow against the cage, that short elbow? Right,
when he knocked out Dwayne Lewis, yep.
Yeah, and he just put him out. So, I don't know. I mean, Herman is going to be the bigger, stronger guy. I have no doubt about that. I think Caleb Starnes is going to be faster. I think if Herman has a gas tank, it's going to be tough for him to hang around there with somebody that's able to move as much as Caleb Starnes is. Mm-hmm. If it goes past the first round, I'm picking Caleb Starnes. If it ends in the first round, I say Dave Herman.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of people that question Dave Herman's chin because of this 4-fight losing streak, he's been knocked out 3 times. And I don't really know. I don't know whether to buy into that or not buy into it because these are all big guys and they're very small gloves. I mean, Gonzaga, Roy Nelson, Stephen Struve, but those guys, put their hands on you. Anybody can go down. It's crazy.
So if you've ever gotten hit by 4-ounce gloves on a heavyweight fighter, mm-hmm. I mean, if they connect in the right place, you're falling, mm-hmm. So I don't know so much about that glass jaw stuff. I mean, I've dealt with it in my career managing guys where they get that stigma, and I can tell you that when you have guys like Roy Nelson, Stephen Struve, Gonzaga, going after you and putting heavy leather to you, I don't care who you are. You get hit the right way, you're going to fall.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Now, Caleb Starnes, he's a very unique guy because at one point in time, a lot of people had to say
the least.
Yeah, definitely. But at one point in time, he was somebody who, a lot of fans were down on, and he had that fight against Nate Quarry. It was a very long time. Oh, go ahead.
Running Man.
Yeah, Running Man. Absolutely. Yeah, he had that thing. And now he's just a completely different fighter. He's way more aggressive. He's finishing guys left and right. He'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. He's fought in middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. He'll do everythting.
He fought Tim Hague. Tim Hague weighed in at, I think, 265 pounds.
Tim Hague cut to 265. He was like 280 at fight night.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And at the limit. And Caleb Starnes was like, dude, let's get it on. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
The one thing I'll give Caleb, I was like, I said to him, all right, the guy that I'm thinking about matching you with is a legit, solid, real heavyweight. He was like, okay, I don't care. What's the date and where should I be?
Definitely.
That was it. What's the date? Where should I be?
Right. Now, Caleb, why do you, or maybe it's not even a solid point to bring up, but why do you think that, because obviously his fans were the ones who came to you and said, you got to put this guy on the card, so I don't really know if it's a fan issue, it's more of like the other organizations, their management, the people running the shows. Do you think that they still haven't, for lack of a better term, forgiven Caleb for that fight? Because obviously he's a completely different guy, and that fight was such a long time ago. He offered Bellator, he said, hey, I'll fight anybody you have in your show, heavyweight or light heavyweight, for free, just give me a chance, and they turned him down and said no. He went to UFC. They said, not right now. We don't really have any interest. Do you think that the people haven't forgiven him for that performance? Do you think that that's what's still holding him back? Obviously, he's had some losses since the Quarry fight, but those were great fights against Dirksen and Cote, and those guys are high level. So do you think they still haven't performed him? Or you still haven't forgiven him?
I guess I'm a fan of the sport first. I really am. I'm a massive fan of the sport. I watched the fight with Caleb and Nate Quarry. I've seen it a couple times. You know what? In my mind, watching the fight objectively, I honestly believe that there was probably something wrong with Caleb that night. Maybe he had an injury. Maybe he was trying to protect it. Maybe he shouldn't have been in the cage that night. I've seen a lot of his fights, and I've never seen him fight like that before or after.
Right.
So my guess is that there was something going on. But, forget. How many fights ago was that? How many years ago was that?
6 years.
To me, it's the MMA world is so fickle. It's always a question of what have you done lately, and what has Caleb done lately? He's crushed his last 4 guys. Come on over to Titan. You're my kind of guy.
Isn't it funny about this industry how one fight can make or break you? I mean, Starnes is a completely different guy, but people keep remembering a fight that happened 6 years ago. Then you have another guy like Houston Alexander who was able to live off of a knockout against Jardine and James Irvin for a very long time. He was able to cash in on that. Don't you find that kind of weird how one fight, good or bad, can help your career? Or hurt your career?
You know what? That's the industry. I mean, and I've always found that there are pivotal fights in someone's career, career-defining fights. Good and bad. And obviously, it wasn't such a good one for Caleb. But I think that also with this industry, you also have to be able to say, you know what? A guy had a bad fight. It happens all the time. The best guys in the world have bad performances. The guy had a bad fight. The guy's come back and he's on a tear. What am I supposed to do? Say, nah, you shouldn't be fighting. You had a bad fight 6 years ago. That's absurd. If you're going to tell me about a performance I had 6 years ago, that was bad. I mean, how do you blame a guy for that? 6 years later.
Right. Definitely. Great point. I like that. Now, your third fight from the top, Walt Harris versus DJ Linderman. This is a very interesting fight because Walt Harris is a very athletic guy, and he's deceptively athletic because you'd think that he'd be a little bit slower and a little less agile for a guy his size, but he's very athletic for a guy that big. Then you have DJ Linderman, who's a very interesting case because he's really a natural 205er, but if you look at his career, his best work is at heavyweight. He has 3 wins over Mike Hayes, who was a gigantic guy, and then you look at some of the other wins.
Well, yeah. Isn't that crazy that DJ is a natural light heavyweight, but his best work, you're absolutely right, has been at heavyweight.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, at the Alchemist Pro Training Center, I've seen Walt Harris there training. I mean, you're talking about a dude that's a gazelle, and he's huge. Walt Harris is like 6'6", probably 270 pounds, and he cuts down. He's chiseled out of rock. The guy's, his hands are fast as lightning. He's strong as a bull. He got clipped in his last fight. His first fight that he had with Rushall was an awesome fight. He gassed out. In the first round, I thought he had Rushall finished in his UFC debut. And then you have a guy like DJ Lindemann that's just not going to stop. Like, if Walt can't put DJ away in the first round or into the second, and his cardio doesn't hold up, DJ's going to tear him apart.
Yep. Definitely. Now, I heard an interview you did a while back, and you said, when someone asked you about why are you signing all these, UFC rejects. I mean, I hate saying that because I don't even know what that even means, because these guys are all good. I don't even understand it. They're good enough to be there, but since they, it's a numbers game, and someone has to win and someone has to lose. So saying someone's a UFC reject just because they lost some fights in the UFC doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, when the reporter asked you that, you said you always got to look at the situation. Like the 3 fights that you have in this welterweight division. Let's start with Brian Foster. He was a guy who was on a nice little win streak in the UFC. He had some medical issues and was released. He still has UFC talent. Yes, he's no longer in the organization, but he still has the talent. It was an outside factor that was the reason why he's no longer with the UFC. And then some of the other guys, Daniel Roberts, that fight against Justin Baseman in War MMA was a very close fight. A lot of people, including myself, had him winning that fight. So if one more judge,
I had him winning.
Yep. If one more judge gives him a scorecard, we're talking about him fighting in the UFC right now. So it's all situation. I thought that was a great point by you, because it's something that I believe as well. It's all about the situation. Let's start with Foster and Gilbert Smith. This is a great fight. What are you expecting from this matchup?
I really, I don't know. Man, Gilbert Smith is a really tough guy. Mm-hmm. He's a really tough guy. Brian Foster's just, he's been around. He's a real vet. I mean, like you said, he should be in UFC fighting right now. Outside forces pushed him out. I think Brian Foster will decision this fight out.
Mm-hmm. Now the fifth fight on this bill, Brock Jardine versus Daniel Roberts. This is another fight where we have situations. Who knows, Usually we get 3 fights in the UFC, and then if the third fight doesn't work out, then Joe Silva or Sean Shelby says, okay, we'll go out on the regional circuit. He only got 2 fights because of, I believe it was the Strikeforce guys coming in. They didn't have enough space on their roster, and he was released. And then Daniel Roberts, like I mentioned, the Baseman fight, he gets another scorecard, he's back in the UFC. So this is a very interesting matchup, because it's one that basically we could have seen in the UFC. Who knows? They put Roberts, who's getting a second stint in the UFC, and Jardine's on a 2-fight lose streak. Maybe we're seeing this on a Facebook prelim.
I would not have been surprised to see on a UFC card.
Right.
I know the 2 guys. I've been fans of theirs for years. I've watched them fight. I've seen a lot of their fights. I think stylistically, it's a great matchup, and I would have not blinked my eyes had I seen that on a UFC card whatsoever.
Yep. Definitely. Now, what are you expecting from this matchup? Because Jardine, the Kenny Robertson fight, he got caught in kind of a unique situation there where he got submitted. And we got Daniel Roberts, who's world class on the ground, and he's unique with his submission. So what are you expecting from this fight?
So if I'm looking at this fight objectively, I see the striking going to Brock Jardine, the standing going to Jardine. I like Jardine's gas tank. Daniel Roberts is a beast on the ground, like really phenomenal on the ground. In my mind, really a case of striker versus grappler. If Jardine can stuff Roberts' takedowns and keep it standing, I think Jardine is going to take it. If Roberts can get him down to the ground and keep him in his world, I think he's going to sub Jardine out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the fight that's going to be opening the CBS Sports Network main card, my favorite fight on this bill, just because of the situation that these guys are in. You have Todd Moore, who's a longtime vet of the sport, but he fought in the WC a long time ago, but hasn't really gotten that opportunity for whatever reason to get into the octagon. He's a very tough guy, but for whatever reason, he hasn't gotten that opportunity yet. And then Ricky Legier, we're talking about a guy flying under the radar. If we look up that term in the dictionary, he's got to be the picture next to it. This is a guy who fought in Strikeforce, undefeated in Strikeforce, fought in Bellator, undefeated in Bellator. I think he's on a 7 or 8 fight win streak, finishing everybody, but for whatever reason, and he's got a good character too. He's got the pink hair, he's the IE bad boy. I don't know why this guy's under the radar. What's going on, Jeff?
Again, we're joking about it. It's a pick'em. Todd Moore is a tough beast. Ricky Legier is a tough dude. proven finishers. I could really go either way on this one. I don't know. I don't know who's going to take this one. It's a very intriguing matchup to me. I think all the fights on this card are very, very close. Like, they could really go either way. And I'm not saying that as a promoter. I'm saying that as a fan. These are not easy fights. There is not one give-me fight on this card whatsoever. I don't know. That one, I think Legere, just because of the streak he's on, is going to go in there with a lot of confidence. And, I think, he's I don't know. Just because of the streak he's on, I would lean towards him, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Now
and I'll tell you the fight that I'm most excited about on this card is Tenino Furia making his U.S. debut against Alvin Robinson.
Oh, great fight. Great fight.
Yeah. Tenino Furia, 26-4, the number one featherweight prospect out of Brazil, rated the number 2 featherweight prospect in the world. The number 1 prospect was Masad Bektik, who was signed to Titan, that I released to go fight in the UFC, and he just won. Mm-hmm. So I believe Tenino Furia now is the number 1 prospect in the world, against Alvin Robinson, who's a Hoist Gracie black belt, and has finished almost everybody, and he's going to be by far the stiffest test of Tenino Furia's career. So this is really the debut of Tenino Furia to America. And I've watched tape on this guy, and, I managed, at Alchemist, when I was at Alchemist, we managed, 50, 60 UFC fighters, some of the top fighters in the world. This kid he looks that good. I can't wait to see what he looks like in person, because Alvin Robinson is no pushover to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Longtime vet of the sport. Like you mentioned, Hoist Gracie black belt. Should be a fun one. One fight on the card, Y.L. Watson versus William Joplin. Originally, we got word that there was a fight between Y.L. Watson and Jeff Curran. That was going to be on this card. What happened with Curran?
So I got the fight done. I had Leo fighting Curran, which I thought was a really cool fight. And literally 24 hours after agreeing to it, Jeff had some personal issues that he had to take care of, and some training, and had a hurt hand, wound up hurting his hand, and literally pulled out of the fight. William Joplin, who I believe is on like a 7-fight win streak, said, I'll take on Watson. We called Watson. Watson said, I don't care who it is, I'll take him. And we put them together, and I think those two are going to have a bomb burner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the storylines of these fights are interesting enough to get you to tune in, and then you see the talent that you have on the card. Like William Joplin.
I'll tell you what's a cool fight too. Is on the prelims is Pedro Nobre, Brazilian flyweight, 15-1 against Dan O'Connor, 5-1. Pedro Nobre has 14 knockouts. A flyweight, 14 knockouts out of 15 wins. The other one, I believe, was, I forget what it was. Dan O'Connor, this kid is 5-1, all submissions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be streaming live on CBSSports.com. So I implore people to watch and tune in, because there'll be 3 fights on that stream as well that are just awesome fights.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, Jeff, I know it's probably a strange thing to say, but this card was supposed to happen at the end of April. I think it was April 26th. This card was supposed to take place in Kansas
25th.
City. 25th. Sorry, 25th in Kansas City. Now the event's been moved to May 16th in Oklahoma. But this bill has gotten very strong, and the card, top to bottom, is great. Was it a blessing in disguise that some of these injuries happened and shifted the card to Oklahoma with the bill that you have now?
It really was. I mean, the fight card to me is much better than it was. I said that I was not willing to put that show on because I did not like what happened with the injury bug. And at the same time, we were negotiating on a deal with CBSSports.com to move us onto CBSSports.com so people could watch the preliminaries internationally. And CBSSports.com is one of the biggest sports websites in the world. I think it's got like 50 million unique visitors a month, something crazy like that. So it was a massive move for us. We also said, you know what? since we're going to move the date, we're going to give the fans back. So we're going to take it from 5 fights, and we're going to make it 6 fights now on the main card. And instead of 2 hours, we're going to do a 2.5-hour show. Mm-hmm. So it's always about the motto and the hashtag for the company, which is fans, fighters first. And I believe it. We live it. And, I don't know anybody else that's incentivizing the fighters. For every finish, they get a bonus. We're just trying to do all the right things, put out the best quality fights. We're on CBS Sports Network. It's a huge network. I just, I couldn't be happier with the momentum that's been going with Titan since I took the reins in January.
Mm-hmm. You bring up your hashtag fans fighters first, the kind of your business model. Basically, that's what you guys have set out to do. You want to please the fans. You want to give the fighters, whether they're the diamond in the rough, the guy who hasn't made a name for himself yet, give him a platform to perform. The guy who has been flying under the radar, like a Rick Legier or Rafael Davis, something like that, give them a platform. Or the guy like a Jason Brills or a Dave Herman or a Walt Harris, someone like that, who's been to the big show, fell on hard times, and rebuild them up, and then and
you have the uber prospects.
Yes, of course.
Furias and the Nobrays and the Dan O'Connors, and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, you guys with your slogan, fans, fighters first. A lot of promoters, a lot of different promotions preach that, but sometimes it never plays out. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. How many organizations out there, just give me a number, how many organizations out there actually are practicing this, what they preach out there, that we're going to put the fans first, the fighters first, all that stuff? A lot of promoters out there say they're going to do that, but how many out there do you think are really doing this?
Doing it the way that we're doing it, to that level, to that extent, you mean?
A little bit of both. The way that you have said and have showed us, and the way that they say they're going to show us.
Sure. The way that I've said, and I put my money where my mouth is. I mean, I was cutting checks all night long for finishes. Out of 7 fights that were streamed and were on TV, there were 5 finishes. I mean, I'll tell you a story. There's a kid, Kurt Hollabaugh.
Oh, yeah.
That's a UFC vet, Strikeforce vet. This kid's one of the toughest kids I've ever met. He fought Pat Healy on less than 7 days' notice. He fought Steven Siler short notice. He lost, I think it was a split decision to Healy. He lost a split decision to Steven Siler. In what, in my mind, was fight of the night that those guys fought.
Right.
And Kurt could have won that fight very easily, and UFC cut him off 1 fight. This kid is a monster, and he fought a kid named Eric Marriott on the first Titan show. Eric Marriott was 22-7, Bellator vet, never been finished. As soon as I put out there that there were bonuses for every fighter that finished, I got, it was either Facebook or a text message from Kurt Hollabaugh, I can't remember which one it was, saying, Mr. Aronson, bring your checkbook, I'm hunting for that bonus. And he did, that whole fight. If you watch him, he's hunting for that bonus. So, we try and, I come from the management side of the business. So I'm always looking at what can I do better for the guys and what would make the guys happier. A professional atmosphere. Check. We did it. I've brought in Rhett Butler now from Fight Services. Rhett used to be in the back under the tutelage of Burt Watson over at UFC. He was at Strikeforce, Golden Boy Promotions, you name it. This guy is top-notch, back-of-the-house guy. We brought him in so the fighters have a great atmosphere. We give them the bonuses. We put on fights that are intriguing and really, really fights that are interesting. And we do all these things, and I don't see anybody else going to the extent to do what we do, where it's not all about the money. There's a ton of giving back and making sure that these guys who train, 2 times a day, 5-6 times a week, in an 8-week camp, and also when they're not in camp, they deserve to fight the best that they can and get battle tested and see if they really are as good as they think they are. And I think we provide that forum and that platform.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's obvious the kind of guys that you want in your organization, whether it's the veteran guy who fell on hard times, you're trying to rebuild him back up, the guy who no one has ever heard of, give him a platform to perform, the hot prospect, the guy everyone's saying is the next guy to be a superstar. What's the kind of guy that you would take more pride in? Like the guy who you built up and got him to the big show, or the guy that you rebuilt and got him back to a big show? Do you have a preference of the kind of guys, like when we come back to this show, like a couple years from now, and you look at the list of all the guys that you've sent up to the big shows, what are the kind of guys that you would take more pride in? The ones that you rebuilt, or the ones that you gave the platform to get built up to a big show?
I think that's it's an interesting question. Nobody's asked me, and it's a great question. The truth is, there's an incredible sense of pride when you see a fighter that has given his whole life, has made it to the big show, and it didn't work out as expected for him. It could be any number of reasons. There's no shame in losing in the UFC. These guys are all animals. They're all phenomenal athletes. They're all fantastic. There's no shame. So if you have a mental lapse, let's say you're getting a divorce, you're in a financial problem, you whatever, it could be anything. Your daughter needs surgery, God forbid, it could be anything. And if your mind is 100% there, you're going to lose. So the thought of bringing those veterans back, giving them a place to, and a veteran could be, 23 years old now,
right,
and giving them a place to shine and a forum to shine and come back and show everybody why they were picked up originally by the UFC, then go back to the UFC and really, kick ass. To me, that's kind of cool. Then on the other side, you've got young, super talented guys that have been having problems finding fights for years, because I know we used to have this problem all the time at Alchemist, where we couldn't get our incredibly talented young guys fights. No one wanted to fight them because they knew how good they were. So taking one of those guys, building them up, getting them this platform, and getting them off to the big show, that's incredible. So really, anybody whose life I have an ability to materially change, I think is something that gives me a great sense of pride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what are some guys that you have signed, and what are the plans for them? Obviously, Ben Saunders, he's like the newest big signing. What's the plan for him going forward? Obviously, you have a lot of welterweight fights on this card. Matthew Riddle, he fought on the last show. He's really a welterweight, but he fought at middleweight against Michael Kuiper. I think he wants to go back down to 170. What's the plan for Saunders? Will he fight Riddle, or is it possible that whoever emerges out of this with a victory of these three fights will they get Saunders? What's the plan for him?
It's very possible. It's very possible that Saunders would get the winner of that. Pele and Riddle have really been going at it on social media. Pele really wants that fight with Riddle. So I think I'm going to let Pele and Riddle duke it out. I think it's a really interesting fight. I'd like to get Saunders a fight, and if he wins, have him against the winner of Riddle Pele for a title.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, Jake Shields, he signed with World Series of Fighting, but there was a point in time where I really thought that you guys had a shot at signing him. You look at your welterweight division, and it's nasty. Look at this. Look at these names: Foster, Smith, Jardine, Roberts, Legier, Moore, Riddle, Saunders. Look at that division. It's stacked. Roberts. Yes, of course. I'm missing names. It's so deep. Yeah. I thought you guys had a real shot at signing him. How confident were you? When you looked at this and you looked at the options that he had out there, did you guys think you were number one, or did you think you were number two behind World Series? Did you think you were number three behind World Series and Bellator, or Bellator and World Series? Where did you think you were?
I thought we had a really good chance at it. I didn't know what was going to go down. I came in very aggressive. I came in, with a super strong offer. I consider Jake Shields one of the best fighters in the world. I think he had an off night against Hector. I don't know, what was wrong, but something was off. Mm-hmm. And I think Jake's going to do incredible wherever he goes. At World Series, I think he'll do phenomenal. I think he's fighting Finch now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think he's going to do fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that World Series came in and they just, they had a need for Jake, and I gave it my best shot, and they got that one, and then I turned around and got Ben Saunders, a couple days later. So.
Now, what exactly were the terms of the deal that you offered Jake Shields? Because we heard something about equity in the organization. You know, what exactly were you offering him?
You know, I don't want to discuss what Jake's deal was, but it was a very strong deal.
Okay, fair enough.
Very strong deal.
Now, I don't want to sound like a smartass or anything, but Jake Shields, he's not, you know, a fan favorite. You know, a lot of people don't consider him an exciting fighter, and your motto is fans and fighters first, and if the fans don't want to see him, wouldn't signing him be against the company policy?
Yeah, but, you know, it's funny that you say that because, you know, in my mind, I said, all right, I think Jake is one of the best fighters in the world. He may not be the most exciting fighter, or his last few performances weren't the most exciting, but before UFC and Strikeforce, Jake was crushing everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, he was submitting everybody, beating everybody. Has wins over Robbie Lawler, Diaz. I mean, the list goes on and on for Jake. So, you know, in my position, I was getting fans like crushing me on social media. Sign Jake Shields, sign Jake Shields.
Right.
And everybody kept coming after me about it. And it's amazing that the detractors were nil. All I kept getting was sign Jake Shields.
Yeah.
So you asked me, I try.
Yeah. That's crazy how fickle this sport is. When somebody's in the UFC and they don't consider them exciting, like a Fitch or an Okami or Jake Shields, people don't want to see them. But the minute they get released, everyone's coming out of the woodwork. Oh my God, I can't believe he got released. Somebody's got to pick him up.
If you look at the Twitter thread when it was first announced that Jake Shields was cut off UFC, it was amazing. There were tens of thousands of comments going, how could UFC cut Jake Shields? How could UFC cut Jake Shields? But, 2 weeks later, everybody was saying, oh, Jake Shields, he's so boring. He's so boring. He's so boring. Meanwhile, you know, Jake Shields had beat Woodley. He beat Maya, you know, and he lost to Lombard.
Right.
I don't know, man. Pretty good resume.
Yeah. And it, like you were saying in that interview I referenced, timing. If Jake Shields beats Lombard, he's probably fighting for the title. That's how crazy this whole thing is.
Absolutely agree.
Yep.
100%.
And I'm a big fan of Jake Shields. I said the thing about the fans fighters first, that thing, but I'm a real big fan of Jake Shields. That run that he had in Elite XC when he submitted Nick Thompson with a one-arm guillotine, he subbed Mike Pyle. Those are all great wins. You mentioned Paul Daly. Those are all great wins. Then when he came over to Strikeforce, he was fighting at middleweight, and that fight against Dan Henderson was incredible. And then that fight against Mayhem where he completely dominated him, except for that one part in the fourth round when he almost got subbed, but he was able to fight through that, and I have nothing but respect for Jake Shields. That little crack was just kind of add some humor.
I'm with you completely. You know, yeah. I think Jake is phenomenal. I mean, you know, to me, Jake is one of the best fighters in the world, and you know, hey, listen, you know, you can't win every battle. You know, the goal is to win the war at the end of the day, and you know, good luck to Jake. It was the right fit for him at this moment. So I'm happy for Jake. Mm-hmm.
And he had a pretty good run in the UFC. I mean, obviously on paper, when you look at the wins and losses, it's kind of an average run. But you look at the guys he beat, Martin Kampmann, Damian Maia, Akiyama, those are all great wins. And then the losses that he had, the GSP, he was the first guy to win a round against GSP in like forever. And then the Jake Ellenberger fight, that was a weird situation. His dad had just died, so he kind of gets a pass on that one. And then the Lombard fight, like you mentioned, you know, something was off that night. Even though in that third round, you know, maybe if we get 10 or 15 more seconds, maybe that guillotine he locks up at the end, maybe we're talking about him fighting for the title. So it's just, I don't know. It's
I mean, I think the Ellenberger fight, I think his dad died.
His dad died like a week or two before the fight. Yep.
Yeah, so you got to give him a whole pass on that one.
Yep.
I mean, the guys won, and like you said, you know, I mean, he gave GSP all he could take. I mean, the guy is a legit guy, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, there was a fight that was rumored to be on this card, like right after the last show you guys did. It was a fight between Mike Ricci and George Sotiropoulos. Is that a fight that you're still looking to book?
Absolutely. That will, in my mind, that will either main event or co-main event the next Titan event.
And speaking of the weird twist of fate that happens in the sport, Soteropoulos is another guy who's in a weird boat, because you look at what he was doing in his beginning run of the UFC. He was probably in any other division he would have fought for the title. Lightweight is so nasty in the UFC that
he had that fight. He was fighting for the title.
Yeah, and now he's.
And I'll tell you the one thing also, Mike Ricci.
Yeah.
Now, you talk about guys that have been there and then, are working their way back. Mike Ricci is, and I've said this before in interviews, Mike Ricci is an assassin. He is one of the nastiest 155ers I've ever seen when his mind is in the game. If you watch what he did on The Ultimate Fighter, fighting at 170 pounds, and the knockout of the season, he put on Neil Magny, who's half a head taller than him, 30 pounds heavier than him, and he just laid Neil Magny out. And he beat everybody except Colton Smith at the end, who wrestled him to death. Mike Ricci, I think, with a couple wins, you'll see right back in the UFC if he could get over George Soteropoulos.
And
he did to George Gurgel what I never expected. I never expected that Mike Ricci would big brother George Gurgel the way he did and would control him the way he did. I never, ever expected that.
Yeah, Mike Ricci is a complete beast, and what he was able to do on the Ultimate Fighter show is just awesome, just absolutely incredible. He's actually a natural 155er, and he went in there with a lot of these guys who are beasts at 170, all these heavy guys at 170 and a lot taller than him, and just tore through the competition. A lot of people didn't really have much expectations about him. He lost to Pat Kern in Bellator, and he just had a loss to get Darren Cruikshank not too long before he went on the show. So not many people.
Actually, that Cruikshank fight, though, if you watch that fight and you score it, Ricci won that fight.
Well, I haven't been able to see the video of that fight, but from what I've heard, a lot of people agree with you. A lot of people say that Ricci should have got the nod in that fight.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a very good fight. I thought Ricci won the fight, but whatever.
Right.
But my point is that we've got these guys that are in the pocket ready to go for the next cards. Man, it's going to be really interesting. If he does to George Soteropoulos what he did to George Gurgel, I'm just going to shake my head and go, I don't know who to put him in there against.
Now, what about George Gurgel? Is he retired? Because there was a rumor out there that he was thinking about hanging it up. Is he in a good place? I heard that he got divorced from his wife, Zoya Frosto. I heard some rumors out there. Is he in a good place? Have you talked to him recently?
I have not spoke to George other than a couple times on social media. If George wants to get back in there, he knows how to get in touch with me. Obviously, he's still under contract. I don't know. I don't know. It was a pretty one-sided beating that George took, and he's never taken a beating like that in his career, where he was totally disseminated on the ground. I mean, it was shocking to me, really. But again, people have bad nights. Maybe Mike Ricci had a great night and Gurgel had a horrible night. I don't know.
Definitely. Now, what about title fights? Because obviously that's a big deal with a lot of fans. They want to see when someone has a good performance, we need to get a belt around his waist. What kind of divisions are you looking at for, okay, this could possibly be the one that we put the title on the line first in? What are your plans for titles?
Yeah, well, I can tell you, if Mike Ricci goes through Soteropoulos the way he went through Gurgel, the next fight after that with Mike Ricci would be a title fight. I think Pele and Riddle, either I would make that a title fight, or we would have that fight, and then the winner of Ben Saunders, whoever I put him against, I think would fight Riddle or Pele for the title.
Okay, I see. Okay. And what about traveling-wise for these events? Are you guys going to be continuously moving, or is this something where just because of the circumstance with the card, the injury bug that bit this first card that was supposed to happen in April, you guys decided to move, or is this something that we can expect more of, you guys traveling the country?
No, we're a traveling roadshow. Expect us in a city near you.
All All right, sounds good. Now, Jeff, let's get some background here about Titan, because obviously Joe Kelly had been running Titan for a very long time. You were in the management side of things in this sport, and then all of a sudden Joe Kelly decides to sell Titan to you, and now you're a promoter. So how did this all come together?
So I had been looking for a long time to get involved in the promotion aspect, not because I so much wanted to be a promoter, but because out of necessity, I needed it because of having a large stable of fighters and not being able to get fights for them on a regional and a local level, and you know, it just became impossible. And then our UFC vets, Bellator vets, you name it, guys didn't want to fight them either, and it's impossible to get fights out there. So out of necessity, and all the other management companies that were having the same issue, out of necessity, I bought Titan, and that's why I think we've been so successful in signing all this high-level talent, because we become almost the de facto place to go for incredible up-and-coming talent and vets looking to get another shot to get back in. Mm-hmm. You know, our UFC release is very unique.
Mm-hmm. Now, why Titan? Why did you decide to buy up a already existing promotion? Why didn't you just go on your own? Because obviously you know the people in this industry. You have the contacts. You were a manager, a guy already working in the industry before getting in to the promoting side of things. So why buy up an existing organization?
27 shows, 26 shows when I bought it, had been on Access TV for years, had credibility, and had, you know, a tremendous roster of fighters that fought for them. I mean, Anthony Johnson fought for them, and, you know, you saw what he just did. You know, I wanted to get involved with people that had been doing it. Obviously, my forte was not in putting together a show. So I purchased Titan. Joe stayed on for the first show and you know, worked with me getting everything through, and then we kept on Joe Wooster, the matchmaker, a bunch of the other people, and integrated it with my people, and you know, it's just been running incredible, and I couldn't be happier. Mm-hmm.
How long after you buy Titan does CBS Sports Network come into the picture?
So I didn't buy Titan Entertainment. Titan Entertainment was Joe Kelly's company that had the television deal with Access and all that stuff. I actually formed a company called Titan FC, and I formed that, and you know, we went back and forth and did the deal for Titan. But I would say that the CBS deal was very, very quick. It was very quick. I lined that up almost immediately. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when you approached them, were they all in on Titan, or were they kind of like, you know what, we'll do a deal and then we'll see how the first show goes and then we'll extend it, or were they all in right off the bat? Because CBS Sports Network, they were trying to get into the combat sports side of thing, because they did that deal with Glory where they had that great tournament, that 16-man slam they had on New Year's Eve. Great tournament. Were they all in automatically, you know, right when you approached them?
They were all in. I mean, from day one, they were all in. We did a minimum of 8-fight deal for the first year, 14 fights for the next year. And, you know, like I said, they've moved us already to CBS Sports. Our slot expanded from 2 hours to 2.5 hours, from 5 fights to 6 fights. I mean, you name it. They're behind it. They are in this space.
Mm-hmm. Were they the first and only people you approached when you said we need a TV deal?
No, there were actually a couple people that were on the plate and that wanted to get involved, and I had to find the best partner long term that I could deal with, and CBS Sports Network, they fit the bill, and we went with it.
Mm-hmm. How long is the deal for?
Let me see, this year and next year.
Okay. And are you the exclusive promotion to that network, or are they looking to acquire more, or is that something in the deal that you can? Okay. And what about CBS, you know, the network station? Is that something that is in the works? Is that a possibility that you guys get back on network TV? I know the last time that a show was on network TV, it didn't really end well with that brawl in Nashville, but is that something that potentially could be in the works?
I would say definitely definitely stay tuned for further developments and updates.
Okay, definitely. And and what about the women's side of things? Obviously, women's MMA has blown up the last couple of years. There's a lot of great talent spread out across, whether it's in the UFC, Invicta, World Series, all over. Women's MMA, is that headed to Titan?
You know, my problem is I know barely enough to be dangerous of women's MMA. I love women's MMA. I think it's great. And then you have somebody out there like Shannon Knapp, who's, you know, the sweetheart of MMA. And all the girls love her, and she runs Invicta, and she does a phenomenal job. And, you know, the thought of competing against someone like Shannon, who's got all the years of experience that she has and has all the connections and does, you know, the kind of job that she does, I wouldn't even throw my hat into that ring.
Oh, I see. When you decided that you were going to become a promoter, was that like after you had left the management side of things, or was it something where you said...
I spoke to my partners, to MC Hammer and Lex McMahon and Nina Safakor. I explained to them what I was doing, and we all agreed from a holistic sense that it made the most sense for me to resign as chairman of Alchemist, so I could concentrate on Titan, and there would be no conflict of interest.
Now, everyone in this industry says, don't become a manager and don't become a promoter. You've dabbled in both. Why does that kind of seem to be, the hardest place to make some money in this sport? Why is it that the promoting and the management side of things are the two toughest?
I don't know. Doesn't a double negative equal a positive?
Right.
Alchemist is done incredibly well, and Titan is doing great. So yeah. I'm good. I'm happy.
I don't know where that keeps coming up. I mean, everyone keeps telling me, but I don't really see it, because you look at the history of this sport and the people who have been the manager and then turn into the promoter. Dana White was a manager, and now
Dana's
he's
a great example, sure.
Yeah. And then you have Ali Abdelaziz with World Series, and then you have Ed Soares with RFA. I don't understand where that comes from.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride. I actually have another interview I have to jump off for.
Okay.
But I really appreciate it, and anybody that wants to follow me, look me up on Twitter, J Aronson. That's JARONSON, Titan FC. Follow me. I give away free shirts. I give sneaks about what's going on. I give info all the time that I shouldn't, and that the PR people get mad at me about. So I'm that guy. Come and follow.
All right, very good, Jeff. I know you're a very busy man. I know you got a lot of things going on, so I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, and best of luck with the event coming up on May 16th.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.